Welcome to the Global Spin Podcast with me, Ryan Kramer, where we take a deep dive into the world of global selling and share the secrets to growing your brand in new markets. Whether you're looking to expand your brand, enter new markets, or boost your sales, we've got you covered. Tune in for unscripted, engaging episodes that will take you on a journey of discovery and success. Let's get started. Let me try that again. Hey, everyone, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Global Spin Podcast, or GSP as us in the biz like to call it. This is a podcast focused on the global expansion nature of growing your business on Amazon, not just focusing on one marketplace, but what it takes to actually build a brand internationally, get it in eyeballs in different marketplaces. It could be on Amazon, it could be in different marketplaces. What does it take for brands who are successful or unsuccessful and learning from those experiences? This is episode 3, the expanding globally on Amazon in Europe and beyond. And what that means, we'll dive into it here in a little bit. But first and foremost, every episode of the Global Spin Podcast is brought to you and powered by, or fueled by, I should say, Frisbi. Frisbi is a growth engine that's helping brands expand internationally across the world in different marketplaces, getting their products and starting to dip their toes into those marketplaces. Go ahead and check them out at frisbi.com. Let them know that the Global Spin Podcast sent to you. Otherwise, go ahead and check us out on social media where we're educating sellers and helping them grow internationally. Going into our episode, if you've listened to the first 2 episodes, again, this is a podcast that launched a few weeks ago. We're really hell-bent and focused on making this a very particular podcast where we're focused on the growth and expansion of brands internationally. And again, so many different takes on PPC, how to launch products, sourcing products. The list goes on and on, but we want to be niche for our listeners and our watchers. If you're watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, we appreciate you tuning in a little bit of your valuable time, but want to get that insight and what it takes to get your brand into different marketplaces worldwide and tips and tricks of that as well. So that's what this podcast is all about. I have a couple people I watch on Radar. I social listen, which is a phrase you might hear on the podcast a lot. I love when it comes to people are sharing lots of tidbits and knowledge. It's not just the loudest voices, but it's the super insightful. They've walked the walk, they've talked the talk, and they're getting recognized on many different levels. It doesn't have to be, again, the loudest voice, but it has to be I like when people who are very intelligent and very focused on specific topics, and that's their niche, right? So you can never know in this business. If you're new to Amazon, you can't know everything. It's literally impossible if you're trying to understand everything and to stay up to date on all the nuances and changes of this industry. But to niche down, to be more focused, that's where I live and that's where I like to do, and listen to the people in that aspect. So call them experts, call them leaders in their field. I like to call them just overall badasses of what they do. But I found there's a show coming up called The Prosper Show. We'll talk about a little bit today, but there's this track international expansion field that I'm lucky enough to be speaking on, along with many other colleagues. But a top that really hit my mind was expanding into Europe, focused on PPC side of things. But I wanted to invite both of those guests on today. One of them is able to attend today. His name is Jerome. He is the founder of e-commerce. And let's just go ahead and bring him on today. We're going to be talking about growth in Europe and beyond. So, Jerome, thank you for coming on the Global Spin Podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Very excited to talk about one of the topics I really like talking about, which is expansion. And when you're from Europe, we grow in like with a lot of different languages. I live like the office is in Luxembourg, but I live in France. If you drive 30 minutes, you're into Belgium or into Germany. So only in our area we've got 4 or 5 different languages within 30 minutes. Let's say of a car driving. So expansion, going global is like, let's say, in our DNA.
I was gonna say, just in the nature that we were talking pre-show about this, of the vast different markets that you were hit. You were in Spain recently, and you're like, oh yeah, it's just a car ride away. And when you think about different countries, I think us in the United States get a little bit I won't say the word it's a little, it seems like it's out there, it's not attainable. In Europe, it's a lot more of a different lifestyle of you just crossing a border. Here it's states. In different countries, obviously it's a little bit different, especially in Europe. But we're talking about Paris and my last my encounter in there. But we were just expansion globally seems a lot more easy when you live in those markets. And I think it's a disconnect when you're here as a seller and entrepreneur in the United States. Maybe first and foremost, before we get into that nature, tell me about your background. I know we were talking pre-show that you're a founder, you're running an agency right now, but you were actually a vendor to kick things off. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, my sort of my history. I was working with a Chinese brand for a long time. I was head of Europe, and we were doing photo accessories, and Amazon was obviously one of the still already that at that time a big play in the market. So I was handling all of the accounts in Europe and had spent a lot of time. And then I decided to open my own company and help brands expand and grow. And at the beginning, I wasn't specifically focusing on Amazon. It was anything to help them grow in distribution and marketing and so on. And then step by step, I found out that actually Amazon was the best way to grow fast. And that's where we focused on that. Since then, we have our own seller account. I've had like how we've had our own brands at some points with our own seller account. So we've got a lot of mix of experience from vendor and seller accounts.
When was that, by the way, just to provide context and time frame?
So it was I started e-commerce 10 years ago. So it's our 10th year anniversary actually.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
exciting.
you. Yes, thank you very much. So, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was really into that, vendor game. We've had our own seller account for 3 years now. We have one in the US also to have some of the brands who cannot sell or they need some help to go have some products sold on our account. So that's more recent for sure. And we have customers like I would say 60% of our customers are sellers today, 40% are vendors.
Okay. So to kind of even maybe break it down more, I know when people talk about third party, 1P vendor, there's a lot of phrases that get interchanged, but also it's very distinct on which they are. For the audience who's listening today, if they're going into different markets, what they have this option to as a private label seller, maybe be a vendor in a different marketplace. Can you kind of describe the different nuances of being a vendor versus having your own private label or even selling, directly to Amazon as a first party?
Mm. So, like the main difference, if you had to say it in one
Yeah.
sentence, it's about selling to Amazon or selling on Amazon. So,
Right.
if you're 1P, if you're a vendor, it's a traditional type of business, B to B to C. Basically, you're selling B2B to Amazon, and then Amazon sells directly to customers. It's a good way because if for brands who don't want to show that they are selling, who wants to have who have a traditional setup of having other retailers, then Amazon is another retailer, and that's very convenient in a sense. The drawback is that you don't control a lot of things because it belongs to Amazon, and Amazon does whatever they want with your products, right? In terms of pricing, in terms of where it sells the products, you could finish with your products being sold in Europe when you've sold them in the US at the beginning. So that things can happen. Now the second way is seller, so that's D2C or B2C. You're selling on Amazon, so you're basically Amazon is a service provider. He's not a customer anymore, and he's offering you space on his digital shelf, basically for you to display and sell your products. In that case, it's a bit the reverse. It's great because you can control your pricing. A lot of brands are looking into that now because they say, okay, I get a more control now. Uh, there's pros and cons. We spend a lot of time with specifically bigger brands also because it's the decision of going one or the other is not always straightforward. And some people would say, no, oh, yeah, 3P is the only way or 1P is the only way. I don't really believe in that. It's more about each customer will have a different situation depending on his own logistics setup, supply chain, but also on what how is the market. Now,
Those
the
are,
last thing,
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead. No,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead. You're on a roll.
yeah, sorry. The last thing I wanted to say is that Seller is open, like 3P is open to everyone, and that's worldwide. Uh, 1P is not open to everyone. It's on like invitation only. So now in the States, it's nearly impossible for you to become a vendor. It's very difficult, or you have to really have an enormous amount of sales and be strategic for them. In Europe, it's a bit easier still because you have some smaller country where they really need to have products, and for them, vendor is the easiest way. So that's the only thing, is that not everyone can become a vendor. We help brands which we believe have the potential to become vendors because we have the connections, but it doesn't work for everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. And actually, recently coming in contact with, I didn't know this was something that you can actually be both. And in different marketplaces, it does matter. You can be a 3P seller in one, but again, if you have control on the supply chain on your specific products, you can actually become a vendor in a different marketplace. That's correct, or what are the kind of nuances of kind of being both?
So technically you can be both, and that's possible. Now the thing is, and the specificity of the European market is that if you're a vendor in a country, Amazon will start to sell in the other countries without even you controlling or knowing that. So effectively, if you're a 1P in France, for example, your products will be sold in Germany. So you will become de facto and 1P in Germany also, even if you didn't want to. With a seller account, it doesn't, it's not automatic, or you normally can control that. That means that if you're going to if you want to sell only in France, it will sell only in France. You can
Right.
sort of say to the system, no, I don't want to sell in Germany. That's so and sorry, to your question precisely, you can be both, and that's called the hybrid situation. As an agency, we like hybrid situation because it's complex, so we can bring a lot of value. And you can play on things like, if you have pricing issues, you go on the seller account. If you have like really best sellers with no price issues, you go on the vendor side. So you can play with stuff, but it adds complexity and it adds a bit of work to handle things. So it's really for the ones who are a bit specialists, or who have got a good agency. And once again, it's to what end. It's like it has to go into your strategy and what you want to achieve, not just because it's fun.
Right, exactly. No one's doing this just to provide another layer of I am bored in my job. I want to create another complex issue for myself to dig through and switch, even almost your brain mentality too of for growth. I think that's what a lot of sellers who are coming on the show and looking at is there's all these barriers, right? Of when I think about going into another marketplace, we always talk on um, language barriers. We talk about localization. We talk about logistics. I mean, those are just the basics of people balk at, or tax and
Mm-hmm.
compliance. Each marketplace, if they are approached by Amazon and they're coming with the silver platter and they're saying, "Hi, why don't we just buy this from you? We'll handle all the other issues. We'll just sell it for you. We'll just pay you for at cost or what it is to you would sell it for, and then you would have no control over it after that." It's almost like a door number one, door number two, but door number two has multiple other doors you have to go through, but it might be more profitable. It's just maybe one less barrier that a brand might have to go through, correct? If
Yeah,
you're going through 1P.
ex- exactly. Like 1P has in a sense a lot of simplicity, and you like, you have a cost price to which you're selling to Amazon, at least at the beginning. So that's pretty clear. On the seller side, you have a buy box price. So if the price goes down, you're not controlling your profitability in a sense, because you have to follow the market. Because if you don't get the buy box, you don't get to sell. So it's, in a sense, it has this thing, and that's why some larger groups much prefer to have a vendor account, because then they have a cost price. It's very simple. They put that in their accounting, and that's all done. On seller, it's you control, but if the market price is lower, you'll have to go down, right? And another thing is that usually for cheaper products, like products which are below $20 or €20 or £20, the vendor accounts tend to be more profitable, because on the seller side, you've got FBA fees, you've got all those fees, and that eats up your margin. And remember, in Europe, when we say €20 or £20, you have VAT inside, so taxes, and that's 20%. So you're actually talking about €18 for yourself. So like when we speak about prices in Europe, they include taxes, whereas in the US, and that's always a surprise for us when we go shopping, right? You see a pricing, wow, that's cool, and then you go and pay, and it's more, and so what happened? Why is it 5% or 10% more? Because the taxes come in the end in the US. In Europe,
Right.
they're included in the price always.
Great point. I think to acknowledge and let people who are doing business in U.S. and actually who are going to look at what they have to sell. Numbers are a big deal when we're talking about growth and expansion. Knowing your numbers, if you're not profitable from the get go, it's probably not best for you to enter a market just blindly and to operate at a loss. It's business 101, and it's something that I'm sure you and companies like us, we're always preaching to make sure, hey, know your numbers, making sure that you're secure in your first kind of ecosystem, and then the expansion is kind of an add-on, like a Lego piece or a puzzle piece, if you will. When it comes to the differences, that's a unique thing. Like you said, if it's $10, there's sales tax, there's federal tax, there's a lot of different unique things, and that's per state here. So it's on at the end. If it's $10, it might be 12.50 or $13 at the end of the day. For you, it's baked into 20 or 10 euros is 10 euros, but the taxes underneath it. So it's a little, what are the nuances in the switching of the brand that you have to educate people? It's just
So
whatever the prices you have to list it at.
yeah, the VAT. So we call tax VAT, value added tax, which was invented in France. Actually, a fun fact, and
Thank
was
you to the French.
spread. Yeah, so like taxes is a thing the French can do well. That they invented that, and it's like it's on you pay tax on value added, and that everyone pays it, right? So the value VAT is different per country. Like northern country have got very high VAT. Like Norway would have 25% VAT. That's one of the highest. Like some countries are changing. I think Luxembourg is 19%. I think France is 20%, and so on. So it's mostly are starting to converge around the 20%. Like it could be 19,
It's a
21. But that
benchmark, if
means
you will. Yeah.
sorry.
It's almost like a benchmark of average of 20% you can give or take depending on the market.
Exactly. So typically, and I remember working with a US brand, and we were having making a calculation, and in the end, he said, "Ah, but I said, you didn't forget to remove VAT?" And he said, "Ah, no, I didn't remove." And then, I can't make money. Well, yeah, no. So so because the market price was already set at a price, and you look at, for example, if you're coming from the States and your product are you produced in the US, if the dollar or the euro goes down, usually when there's a worldwide crisis, unfortunately, we're having the war in Ukraine. Typically, the impacts that the dollar always goes up because that's a lot of global money, and that's like the refuge, and everyone goes there. So the other currencies go down. So typically, in that situation, if you're a seller or if you're a brand, if your product are produced in the US versus a competitor who's producing his product in Europe, his cost, like your cost, will go up for European based people because in euro, the although your dollars, the price will be the same. In euro, you will have to increase because exchange rate. So it's also taking that in mind, and that's for sure. If you're based or you're making it produced in China, where it's dollar based, this is also has a big impact. And if your competitors are strong and based in Europe for production, that's another thing you have to look into and be careful about.
That seems like, yeah, that's a whole nother episode. We can talk about currency conversions coming from the currency background or the exchange foreign exchange background with my former company. That's what you're always trying to talk about is holding anytime money exchanges hands, right? Whether it be in a currency or in a bank account, out of a bank account, paying an entity. Anytime it converts into different currencies, you're always going to pay a fee, whether it be bank, transfer fee, whatever it is. There's someone's going to be snagging a part of that away. But in terms of currency, valuations of it up and down, it could be 10 euros right now, but then in 6 months from now, it could be 11.50. It doesn't
And
quite
yeah,
often
we
fluctuate,
yeah, we went from one, like a dollar was 1.3 to 1.1. It's like,
right?
okay, that's a huge gap. And a lot of like US based product was suffering or suffered a lot in Europe for that exact reason. So to come back to the conversation we were having in uh, deciding which account is best. depending on where you are, this can have also an impact, because if you know your profitability is a bit tight, maybe the vendor account is a bit better in some cases because you have at least a fixed cost, or maybe the seller account is a better situation because you can increase your end user prices if the market can absorb it, as usual. So it's like the reality of the market is very important to understand. Like, if your products are already sold by someone else, or if your competitor or your competitors locally, if they're moving their prices, that will have an impact on, obviously, if you manage to sell or not.
Absolutely. And if I'm making that decision as a seller and I come to this crossroads, is there like a do you work with them? Is it the numbers, or is it just like what are the other things that they might need to know in order to choose? Because I think the biggest glaring thing would be if I'm going to sell as a vendor in Europe, and again, when you expand, these are your options. If I'm going to be a vendor in Europe, I can't just pick and choose the marketplaces, which is really hard to like hold up because there's so many different markets within Europe itself. Amazon operating, obviously in Italy, Spain, France, Germany, UK, kind of can possibly touch in there. It's a little nuanced because it's on its own virtual island, if you will. No pun intended, but it with Brexit, it's more complex. And then obviously with Belgium, the introductions of new markets, possibly Ireland down the road. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to that. But with 1P, they have control over all those different marketplaces. But with 3P, you have to be almost localized in each market. So it's almost a do I scatter and have a gunshot like approached, or do I have a like a shotgun approach, or do I have like a one point of entry, and then I'm kind of that's what it is. Is there because of that cap? Is that a tough conversation to have with people that they have to grapple with?
So, like, the number of countries is an opportunity, but also a challenge in itself. Like you said, there's
Right.
loads of customers to reach, but loads of different languages, cultures, and like logistics issues and stuff to like
To
address.
navigate for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even just product compliance going into a country, EPR regulations in both France and Germany recently and coming soon. I say the list, and this is obviously not to scare sellers. This is what we do really well and what you do well. It's a there's more barriers when it comes to going into each market, but the opportunities for growth and to have the hold on, your control over it, it's almost more appealing to a lot of people. I would think.
Yeah, let's say there's obviously it's we won't sell our services, so we'll paint the thing a bit like it's super
Sure.
complex, and don't go on your own. There's an element, obviously, of it's true that it's different, and there's a lot of things you wouldn't think about or you wouldn't have thought about. Now, the reality is that it's an enormous market you can tap into, and it's also like, I was always amazed when I've helped sellers or vendors in the US, is that you could be successful so quickly in the US. It can, pick up super quickly, but you can lose also so quickly. And then things are like keywords could be super expensive or things like that, which makes it very difficult to sometimes do business. In Europe, in a sense, it's a bit difficult because you have to build country by country, and it's like you can be successful in Germany and not in the UK. You can be successful in Spain and not in Italy, right? So it's like, about you build one by one, but once you're there, it's very difficult to take you out because someone will have to take you out in every country. So there's an element of building, and that's very European. It's more stable, things don't change so quickly, and so on. That's very
Lower pace, yeah, exactly.
very, very, very European in a sense. But I see that as a potential. It's like you're investing in something which will be durable, which will stand as a business. Now, the thing is, as in every country, you have to build a bit your brand. So sometimes if you see the conversion rates are a bit low, it's all you have to do the extra effort. And that's why, specifically on Prosper, for example, on the Prosper show, I'll be talking about how advertising can help you also build your brand, because you want to be people to recognize you. If you're a well-known brand in the US, doesn't mean you will be recognized in Europe, and vice versa, to be fair.
Right. let's just go down the road for simplicity reasons, not to discourage. I think the vendor side is very fascinating, but for all intents and purposes, I think more often than not people are going towards the third party route. Statistically, and this is part of the talk I'm going to have, and I think the international growth track is for Prosper, to shout out Prosper Show, is very strong in terms of the education that's coming this year. With our panels, you're right before our talk, so I'm gonna kind of sneak in and catch it right before then as well. Um, just the educational component. There's a statistic that I'm really excited about on Jungle Scout when it comes to they have a seller survey every single year, which is really fascinating. Surveyed 2,500 sellers, and compared to last year, 25% were very focused on international growth in 2022. This year, it's actually doubled. So it's more 50% of sellers of surveyed that are really focused on growth internationally. I think it's starting this turn of the market of where's this opportunity looking for in terms of me as a brand. Optimally, a lot of people have figured out, pandemic time has come and gone with a bubble, investments, logistic problems. It's kind of like evened out and come back to pre-pandemic issues. But a lot of people are focused on the growth aspect of their business now, so they're looking towards. Obviously, Canada would be one easy thing if they're in the United States, but a lot of people are really intrigued by Europe and that market. If I'm a seller and you're advising them, what's kind of that entry, that conversation look like for you to say, hey, let's have this like nice easy guide into one of the largest markets globally that you can probably tap into.
So yeah, typically the conversation goes into first understand your market. So and that's things we do, but customers could do that also themselves. Is look at who are your competitors, like in that category. Who are the strong ones? Look at numbers, the size of the pie. What's the size in the US? What's the size? Sorry, in Germany, in the UK, and so on. And I'm trying to get a feel for the market because are you reaching out for something which makes sense or no sense, right? Are the prices making sense or no sense? Once again, to the exchange rates, VAT or taxes discussion is like if you see that actually your prices are out of the market for whatever reason, maybe because there's local production, maybe this or that, you don't know. It's also about understanding in some markets. Um, some products make sense and others they don't. Like for example, we have a brand of potties coming from the UK, for instance. We've had them expand in all Europe. We've come now in the US. We can't really go in India because no one is using potties in India for kids, right? So it's like typically you need to look into your market and maybe your product is doesn't make sense in one of the countries. So for me, it's really before jumping is building your business plan with a bit of data. And we're lucky because Amazon, wherever they are, they you can with tools. You mentioned some. You've got the Helium 10s, the Jungle Scouts, all of them, and there's more Keeper and all that merchant
Mhm.
words, um, where you really can get a feel for the size of the market, how many people are looking for keywords for your product, maybe for your brand. And and you could find out, oh, people are looking for my brand actually on Amazon in Germany, and I'm not there. Wow, okay, missed opportunity, let's go. So it's really getting that feel, and then afterwards it's making a plan of how you start. Like, do you want to go in all the countries, pay for VAT everywhere, or do you want to be a bit more specific, build a use case or build a successful case study, sorry, and then start to expand? That's usually what we try to do, is like, okay, go step by step. Because, and I'll finish with that part, is like, um Europe is content is super important. Like, content is always important, but localized content, like a German customer, if you make a mistake or if it's not proper German in the title, that will not work. And when I say proper German, it's like with no grammatical mistakes. And I speak German, but I make a lot of mistakes because it's a complex language. Well, you can't make mistakes, otherwise the customer will see and say, no, not buying. French is a bit the same. Even English, you need to make sure that it works. So like, content is super important. Localization is super important, and it is expensive. Like, anyone who wants to do that cheap for you, I would be careful about it, because like I haven't seen no translator, like automatic translator, working very well. So if you're in value added, or like high price, or a bit good quality product, you need to invest in that. So maybe you do one country, Germany usually, or the UK are two big markets. You start with that, you earn a bit of money, and then you start to invest in the others.
Right, you get what you pay for. The whole adage is. I think you brought up a couple interesting points, Jerome. One of them being it's fascinating to see how content is so important with people in the European marketplaces, because you say words pick up on words, they pick up on pictures. It can't just be a cookie cutter introduced to people and then they're just going to take it at face value. I think it's us in the United States, we've taken things at face value of we're very lazy when it comes to like reviewing things. So if it looks like a good picture, we're in. But in terms of Europe, I think it's more complex of how are they speaking to me? Are they someone I can trust? So it goes almost a different layer underneath that. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, and if a customer feels there is some BS in what you're doing, excuse my French, it's like you won't get there. And just make an exercise. Have a look at reviews in Germany. Like the guys in Germany writing reviews, it's like they're not joking when they're making a review. And you could go in Japan also. They similar. The guys can spend a very long review with pictures, really documented, technical, about what they like, they didn't like. I speak specifically about Germany, because you wouldn't get that in France, for example. Like French put three words, and because they don't they don't not bothered generally. So it's like a guy or the customers which put that kind of effort in reviewing a product, you can believe me, if your product is not technically well described, they will say, hell no, I'm not in. And the whole thing about the culture about, made in Germany, and they're super proud of the things made in Germany or made in Switzerland, because it's super technical. It's like zero default. That's super important. And we were helping a water brand from the US. It's like, in Germany, talking super technical about the details, about how it all worked, that sort of improved our conversion rate immensely. So it's like making sure you understand that it's how it works. And sometimes there's some discussion about SEO versus how SEO deep should I go with keywords. It's like in Europe, I would not try to put as many keywords as possible in the title, and it looks ugly, because that won't work with customers. You need to have your keywords maybe, and a description which makes sense, which is smart, which is speaking to the customer and makes sense to him. If you try to make it too fluffy with too many things, that will never work. And I remember seeing sometimes listings with clearly it was someone who sort of tried to do, okay, I'll do that SEO thing where I put all the keywords in capital letter, and it's like, wow, that will never work, dude. Don't do it. So it's being very specific about that, which will make a difference.
How do you how does one, if I'm a brand and I'm a one person or a few person operation team, I think a lot of sellers can kind of empathize with the fact of I want to know my customer more. Obviously in the United States, or they know their product, that's why they create their product of knowing who this is for. But when it comes to an audience, what's the best way to educate myself on a German market versus a French market? Like you said, they're French, the ones I picked up, and this is news to me. I've been to France. It's more to the point, very simple, straightforward. German, you don't all caps. They'll pick it up and they won't trust it. That just seem. I don't think that's daunting. I think it's just fascinating and different. How does a seller, an entrepreneur pick up on the right nuances in order to tap into those markets?
So I think in general in Europe, you want to back up the things you say. Like if you say I'm the best in something, okay, what everyone's the best. And it's like it's being
Prove it.
and typically my recommendation is spend time on Amazon.de.fr. in English, but also in German, because the content may change a bit. Because you can have different languages for the same, because in the US you can have like Spanish pages also, if the people change his settings. So it's have a look at your competitors pages, have a look at what people have written down, the type of reviews, use Google Translate on the reviews, look at how they speak, the way they interact. Amazon is amazing. You've got all those millions of customers talking to you on the review pages. Just use it, and go in France, see if there's any difference. To be fair, there's not major differences. It's not like, it's a totally different person, but it's just you'll have nuances. You'll see things which maybe you'll find ideas which, okay, might change my content because I saw all the customers were complaining about one thing on one customer. I remember a tip, I think it was from Kevin King, I heard, which I found was really interesting, about using Chat GPT with reviews. Is like taking the 50 best reviews or worst reviews and asking Chat GPT, okay, can you tell me which are the worst things, or what people complain really about this product? You could do that. You could use AI, for example, to get insights about specifically in Germany, and do the same exercise in the other countries. The issue is that you have to do it 5, 6, 7 times in Europe, because each country is specific. That's why we usually tend to say, okay, start with one. And if you're a small seller, try to find a young freelancer in a native speaker who can do your content. It probably won't be the most perfect content in the world, but at least you want to have something native. And you can find freelancers. There's loads of freelance websites. Maybe that's a good way to do it. There's other great companies. YLT is one which is usually,
Yana is amazing.
yeah,
Yes.
amazing, but it depends a bit on the budget. If you're a smaller company or you're on your own, you have a lot of different options these days.
A couple things. I know we're wrapping up. We're kind of like towards the back half of our podcast. Some of the things I picked up on are obviously being smarter with these markets. In terms of a brand, if I'm a seller, I know a lot of people kind of balk at the operation. We On our last episode we had Antonio Bindi, who has a team of experts, and he actually has individuals who are in charge of specific markets. That's their whole job, is just to worry about the UK market or the French market or Italy market, and have one person dedicated to that. If I'm expanding, do I need to think about people expansion first and then the market? Or how do you, obviously this kind of goes hand in hand, I know, with your services, but is it more of a, have someone just solely focused on this marketplace to really understand it, instead of going mentally into each marketplace at different points uh in my job?
So to be fair, we have people. I can give you the example of how we handle it. Is like we have people of each, like, native in every language. Do we have one only handling one country? No, we don't. Like, each one is handling a brand, and he's sort of covering all the countries. And because we're European, we know a lot of, and that's why we based ourselves in Luxembourg, which is a bit the heart of Europe. um, and when we have a question, we team up to answer it. But I don't think you need specifically only a British guy, a German guy, and a French guy and a Spanish guy. It's like, wow, it's like that seems like it won't work financially, because it's also, some languages are very difficult to find. For instance, like Dutch, you don't have so many Dutch speakers, for instance. So I don't think you would need that. It's important to have feet on the ground, or people which have lived in Europe and have breathed a bit that space and have traveled a bit. Like, because if you take someone who's never moved out of France, of Germany, or like Italy, he will know very well Italy, but maybe less well the rest. So you want, and a lot of I have kids now. They all, when they study, they all travel 6 months and live somewhere else. So now all the kids have a lot of experience. Once, as I said, like, you can get a lot of freelancers, and you've got a wide range of different agencies or people which can help you from a one guy company or a freelancer to larger operations like ourselves, obviously the price range is very different.
Right. An extension of your brand, you kind of tapping into those resources. That's very well said. What is maybe Jerome? What's kind of the most the scary thing that kind of keeps you up at night? I always love asking my guests of, you have all these different, pieces and hands in different marketplaces. What's kind of a scary thing that keeps you up as both an owner of an agency, but also to be a purveyor of these brands? What's the scariest thing that you have to encounter
I
on a
think,
day-to-day basis?
yeah, the scariest thing is that Amazon suspends accounts, and they do that sometimes even without reason, and most of the time without good reason. That sort of doesn't because I'm a good sleeper, but it's like that's really, we're very sorry for our customers, and that it sucks because then they say, okay, I can't keep paying you if there's nothing happening, and like we have incentives and percentage on sales, so that really sucks. And then what keeps us up, yeah, if once again, I'm a good sleeper, but it's like making sure that we our mission is to grow brands, and what makes us stay up at night is like, okay, when a brand is like plateauing or not growing much, is like, okay, what else can we do? So we offer advertising, we have PPC, DSP, all of that, but sometimes it's like for whatever reason, it could be the market is not growing that fast, or the branding is not strong enough, or lots of things. That what's like bothering me mostly, because that's really our mission. And to a certain extent, if we were true to our mission for the brands we can't grow, we would have to say, what, we're not true to our mission, and that sort of hurts.
So
Thankfully, because
yeah.
Amazon is Amazon, we there's a lot of growth potential to be done. But
I was gonna say, so with growth, and I want to take a moment to kind of like focus on the other nuances in different marketplaces. We didn't ever touch on PPC, which I know you'll be talking with Jeff Cohen here at Prosper. Um, Quickly, if you can kind of give us a kind of an insight onto that talk, and kind of your little free perch of what are the differences on PPC internationally, and I would say in Europe versus maybe in the United States. I think a lot of people would want to figure out, hey, that's a major driver of my business, and it's kind of the most important, maybe one of the more investment heavy services I have to give in order to get sales. What are those different nuances when I expand internationally?
yeah, so generally, like, there's no mystery, there's no big secret, or there's no big differences. Like, advertising is advertising, branding is branding, and like customers in Europe, in everywhere in the world, are sensitive to brands. Coca-Cola is selling everywhere in the world. That's because brand. Apple, because branding is so important. Um, I think the nuances are about, once again, it's the size of the markets. It's like keywords and like how things work. PPC works the same everywhere. And if you know how the PPC works in the US, the principle are the same here. The thing is that sometimes you get like different markets are at different sizes, and like prices of like keywords, prices, looking at keywords, looking at, you can't translate sometimes a keyword just with a translation tool. It's because the other keyword in another language is probably not exactly the translation. It could be something else. So there's loads of jokes, and we love with Jeff to make jokes about translations of like keywords which don't translate at all in another language. And that's the things where you need to be careful. Once again, to my point about same as with content, if your content doesn't sound like it's written by a local guy or a native speaker, like it's a bit, it's funny, and no one will buy. So it's really about being looking like country by country. And once again, it's about the conversion rate at the beginning. At the heart of it is that if your product doesn't convert, your advertising will not be very efficient.
Gotcha. And I think finally, Drum, before we kind of talk about more e-commerce, um, what's one market in Europe that Amazon doesn't have a footprint in that you wish would? I'm curious.
To be fair, in Europe, you mean, or in worldwide, or?
Um, Maybe in Europe, and then I'm curious about your worldwide take as well.
Yeah, so in Europe, I would say that the
Has Amazon got it all covered? I'm curious. I
I
know
think
we launched in Belgium.
North Europe is really exciting. Like they've started in Sweden, but like Norway, Finland, Denmark are really interesting markets, and I would love them to go in that more in that direction for sure. Um, in and for the rest of the world, I think Africa is really an interesting market. I would love them to tap more into.
Yeah, and there's
Like
I'm sure
South
like
Africa is due to come, but it's unclear. Like it's we don't know when, and there's a lot of other countries, right?
right, there's going back to Yana, I know there was a very popular post I know she mentioned, and I kind of did some digging too. There's a popular notion that South Africa is coming. Um I did a whole, thought there's kind of the secret behind the scenes that, in South America, that there's a focus on like Chile, Colombia, kind of around the Brazil aspect of things. But with that being the cornerstone, and then Africa being a whole nation that's it's kind of budding, that has no footprint, that's a little difficult to operate in, obviously right now because of the vast nature of it, but also just the whole nuances of tax compliance, everything about growth, and then how do you do fulfillment to those nations. So but yeah, I would agree with you. Globally, Africa, I think that's a very fascinating thing. That's not the first time I've heard that in 2023. So um
And
as we wrap,
I'm
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry, and I want to say I'm thinking about going like to an e-commerce show and speak in South Africa to really to because we want really to invest that space, and we believe that that's the future of e-commerce also.
Absolutely. I mean, it's I know there was a one conference recently, just a few weeks ago. I want to say that that was the first one I've noticed. But yeah, a lot of markets are. Everyone's talking about Mexico. They're talking about South America. I know Africa is kind of on a couple people's lips, but until the infrastructure's there, obviously, would love to help people grow there too. So, but tell me about e-commerce. The whole nature of what you guys do, what you do best, and what kind of is your focus for 2023. I'm curious for people listening and watching.
Well, thanks a lot for asking. It's like our DNA is to help brands grow in e-commerce. So that goes into first understanding the market, like we talked about, studying the market, looking at market sizes, opportunities, pricing, what they should do, strategic guidance on what they should do, and then we handle accounts. So a big part of what we do is account management. So vendor accounts, seller accounts on Amazon, on other platforms in Europe, Bol.com, Cdiscount, others. And then we have like partnerships on VAT, on taxes, on logistics. We have great partners which can help, and so we try to have this kind of ecosystem. We do a lot of media, so Amazon advertising parts, which is very important for us. And we have a last part which is about technology. We do a lot of dashboard integration, and we produce dashboards for our customers, like gathering all the information through APIs for them to have like live information. Because if you are selling on like 5 different countries in Europe, you have 5 different accounts, like seller or vendor, to where you have different data. You have to log in each time, so we can gather everything into one dashboard.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And it's very comprehensive in terms of, your footprint internationally. So which is why you're going to be on stage at Prosper show. So if people are coming, they're going to need to stop by and catch you and Jeff. I'm already excited about it. And I was talking to Jeff last night. He dropped a party, unofficial party list at Prosper as well, just a few hours ago too. So had to look at that and produce that. But if they want to get in touch with you or the e-commerce team, how can they do that, Jerome?
So we're very active on LinkedIn. So I recommend to follow us on LinkedIn, either my page or the e-commerce page. We have obviously a website. We're very active with blogs, and we try to share a lot of value to the community on what's happening in general on Amazon in Europe, but globally also. So yeah, and you can ping me on LinkedIn anytime.
Amazing. So if you haven't already followed Jerome, follow e-commerce in their LinkedIn pages. Also in the resources below, if you're looking at the show notes, go and check that out. We tagged them in the resources. And then if you're looking for Prosper, still haven't booked. I learned this, Jerome, if you're a data and statistics person, most people wait until the last 2 weeks before Prosper show to book their ticket, which is 40%. And that's coming from it's a crazy statistic. So if you haven't booked already, go ahead and check out. And you want to hear Jerome and myself speak, go ahead and book your ticket to Prosper. Are you coming in early to because you're in France, or how
Yeah,
does
I'm
that work
flying. Actually,
internationally?
I'm flying next week. I'm
Okay,
going to Los Angeles. I'm visiting Expo West first, then going to Prosper, and then flying back afterwards. Yeah,
man, lots of travel. But you got to be where the sellers are. You were just in Spain, so it's the kind of the part of the other side of the business to kind of meet with people and talk to them face to face. But amazing to talk with you today, and appreciate it. I'm excited to talk with you face to face here in Vegas in a few days. I'm going to say now instead of weeks because it's coming a
exactly.
bit quickly. But thank you so much for hopping on the Global Spin podcast today.
Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. And then everyone, thank you for tuning into the Global Spin podcast. Again, this is episode 3. Expanding globally on Amazon in Europe and beyond. That's what we titled this episode. If you're just new to the podcast, again, episode 3 means that just started. This is an unscripted and fun way to learn about growth and expansion internationally, talking with sellers focused on and service providers who are helping people growing brands internationally, and just little tidbits and knowledge. If you're new, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Or follow myself at Ryan Kramer on most of those platforms as well. If you want to be a guest or look at our past episodes, audio versions will be up here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And then other versions, if you haven't caught in the past, go over to our YouTube page and follow along. I'm Ryan Kramer. This is the Global Spin Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time on another fantastic episode. Take care.